hello everyone, and welcome to the program. Online with me today is Shaman Isis. Shaman, welcome as always.
Hello, Billy. It's so lovely to see you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. For the X audience, we'll be starting the actual production of the podcast here in just a few moments. I always try to give everyone a chance to come in, assemble on the live stream. And also just to let you know, both myself and Shaman are tagged in this post where you're watching the program. And we can't always respond during the program, but sometimes we do our best. But a lot of times after the program, any questions, comments, or anything you'd like us to talk about in the future, we'll address those after the program. So all you got to do is tweet at us, and we'll go ahead and get that message or post at us. That's what you have to say now because it's X. But anyway, okay, we're going to talk about a number of things today. I'm going to go ahead and get started. As for those of you who are just joining the program as it's live, welcome. And we're starting the podcast right now. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. My name is Billy Dees, and on the studio line with me is Shaman Isis. Shaman, as always, it's a thrill to have you here.
Thank you, Billy. I'm so happy to be here. Always a joy to work with you.
Well, thank you. We're going to talk about any number of things. If you've never checked out the program before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. Today is going to be commentary, opinion, a lot of good stuff like that. Shaman and I have been doing these together here over the past few weeks, and you guys have listened. So we're very excited about that. We're thrilled with that, and we are glad that you are here. We're going to talk about a number of different things today. One of the things, this was actually something that Shaman brought up to me within the last few days, and I found it intriguing. Are we getting tired of celebrities? All right. And it's more than that. It's more nuanced than that. Are we wising up to the publicity machine that manipulates us a lot of times? And we're going to talk about that at length. And of course, we are going to talk a little bit about Biden and what is going on with Israel. We are actually in production today. This is October 19th. And at this time, here again, we're live and we are in production roughly at 7:03 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as we're going live and as we are in production, the president is due to talk tonight. And he is expected to ask for a mountain of money in funding both the Ukraine and what's going on in Israel. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit as well. So anyway, let's start with the celebrity. What's the word I'm looking for here? Are we wising up to celebrities? And here again, I'm not anti-celebrity. I enjoy fun and entertainment as much as anybody else. But this idea that they know more than anybody else and they should be influencing policy, I believe a lot of the backlash started during COVID, when a lot of these celebrities got really preachy about COVID. And recently, I'm sure you followed Jada Pinkett Smith. She's got a new book out and she's talking about Will Smith. And apparently a lot of backlash towards her because she mentioned that Tupac was her true love. And here again, how much of this are they blowing up to get people's attention in the book? How much are they trying to inflame people? But the idea that you would say something like that, and I really don't know the status of her and Will Smith's marriage. From what I understand, she said during the interview that they haven't been together since 2016. Now, that can mean a lot of things. That could mean they weren't together intimately, or they haven't been living together, or whatever you want to call it. It could mean they're divorced. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that means. But here's the thing. She also said during this interview that the slap was something that she didn't understand because they weren't really together. So that means that he put his career on the line, getting inflamed about somebody that evidently he wasn't with. Now, I don't know how much of this is conjured up to get people talking, but I will say this. I personally would never, I believe we all have had some sort of a first love or some sort of a love somewhere along the line that came along and captivated us in a way that was very unique.
Yeah.
But the situation is this, there's an old saying that you can never step quite, let me try that again. You can never step twice into the same river because it is never quite the same river and you are never quite the same person. And some first love that you had decades ago, that happened in a certain moment in time that you can't recreate. When you're young, everything about love and everything is new, and you think all these older people that you're discovering something new that older people don't understand. So you're having all these new emotions and you're having all this new stuff, and it's really great. But it's not the first time human beings have experienced that. And as you go through life, you get into different stages. And to compare any relationship you have now with something that was long ago, I believe is very unfair to the person that you're with.
Yeah.
Very unfair to yourself. And especially when that person is deceased, because you are essentially making them a legend. You are making them a ghost that you will never be able to compare to. So she caught a lot of backlash for that. And I got to tell you, this slap, I got to tell you, the whole thing just was weird.
Yeah. It was very strange.
It was very strange. I can't imagine that it was orchestrated for publicity because it didn't help him or his career. You think so?
That's debatable.
He hasn't had a hit movie since.
Exactly, Billy. We live in the attention economy, and sometimes getting a little bit dirty when you're a little bit too clean is a great way to re-engineer your reputation and get fresh attention and position yourself in a new way.
Here again, as a man, I'm a man. I grew up with alpha men. My dad was over the top, too much of a good thing, alpha man. Very violent. Fights and all that type of thing was not uncommon. And the only reason that I'm mentioning this is I've been around a lot of very aggressive men. I've been around men who know how to fight. Mm-hmm. I've never witnessed one walk up to another man and slap them. It looked very much like Victorian times where somebody
it looks staged to me.
He had like this white glove and he took it off finger by finger and slapped each side of his face and said something like shame on you, shame. Yeah. It didn't come. I mean, this isn't something that you would do to Mike Tyson. This isn't
no. You would do it like that if you were trying to walk a very fine line.
And I can't imagine.
And let's just mention for a second, I have to interrupt to say this.
Sure, go ahead.
Will Smith's been in movies for decades playing action roles. He knows how to throw a punch. He knows how to release his anger, but he's also been in the public eye for decades. He knows how to contain his anger under the most extraordinary circumstances. So I found the entire thing to be a little suspect.
Like I said, it didn't look like what's that Keanu Reeves, that character, John Wick. It didn't look like a John Wick move to me.
No.
Okay. It didn't look like a Mike Tyson move to me. It looked very strange. And you could make the argument, and there was a lot of conspiracy talk about this, that this was staged. That this was all to, get publicity and the Academy Awards and this and that. I don't know. I think it had mixed results for everybody. And even for Chris Rock. Although I don't know how much of Chris Rock's routine you managed to catch, but it was hilarious. It was absolutely, he said something like, everybody in this room has been cheated on, but nobody in this room has interviewed the person who cheated on you and said, so how did you feel when I was liking your dick? And that's it's a fair statement. To sit there and act like you're having this deep intellectual conversation about somebody who's describing having sex with somebody else, and then this is like some kind of a learning experience for you. The whole thing was just weird.
I have a theory about that whole situation.
Okay.
I would be very interested to know, and I've heard this as a rumor, and we need to see if we can confirm it. But the phrase alopecia, which wasn't really understood internationally, overnight became a very understood phrase. Suddenly, it was trending everywhere in all the media what alopecia was, and how it's dealt with. And it's my understanding that Pfizer also came out with a drug for alopecia that same month. So I would be interested. I'm going to look into that, and we can mention it next time. And I'm going to see if that's actually in fact true, because if it does, it really does make the whole situation look interesting.
Yeah,
to take a problem that didn't really wasn't part of the collective consciousness of people, like the average person just didn't know what it was, and overnight make it something that a ton of people understood. That's one way to make sure that your product does really well.
Yeah. The other thing, here again, we're talking about things that didn't go over well. These comments that she made did not go over well. She wasn't greeted like this person who's bestowing all of this knowledge and insight upon us, and we're supposed to be so happy about it. It didn't go over like that, if that's what they were planning. The other thing that didn't go over well recently was Oprah Winfrey and The Rock asking for donations for Hawaii. Now, it might very well have been well intentioned. Apparently they gave a lot of their own money, which is fine. But you have a marketing background, as I do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would actually be interested to know how well Jada's book is selling globally, because it's certainly gotten tons of attention, and we live in the attention economy. And I talk to my students. I teach public relations as an adjunct professor, and I teach my students that when you see a celebrity getting attention, pay close attention to whether or not they have a project, because if they have a project, then there's most likely engineering going on behind what's going on. Rarely do people use their life experiences and for no reason. In the celebrity world, they usually have a project that they're pushing forward. And the more emotional, the more controversial, the more thought-provoking, the more irritating for people, the more attention it gets. So I think in this case, it'll be interesting to see how well the book does. In regards to The Rock and Oprah, they did not take the temperature of the room. And sometimes when you deal with people who are such huge celebrities, it never occurs to people to advise them or for them to check into whether or not the way they're going about something is going to come across well. If they'd asked me, I would have said, this is not going to go across. This is not going to come across well, because the temperature of the average person was very hot. And the last thing they wanted to be asked for was money by people who are incredibly wealthy. I think he's almost a billionaire, and she definitely has to be.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And two of the richest people in the world asking for money. To me, it would have made a lot more sense to have some local people come on there and talk about their personal experiences, what they've lost, and have that. To me, would have been much more empathetic than having quite literally two of the richest people in the world advocating for other people to give money. It just, here again, it might have been very well intentioned. They might have been using their influence and so on, and apparently they gave their own money too. But it just wasn't that good. And I got to tell you, with all this terrorism that's going on right now, and then the talk of terrorism, it kind of reminded me about something. In the wake of 9/11, I was very much involved as a disc jockey in the music scene and some other things. And there were a lot of these concerts put on to help give money to Ground Zero and people's families and all these other things. I found it interesting. Somebody finally did say at one point that a lot of these bands that are going on these telethons and other things, there should be a $5 million cover charge to participate in that, because they were basically, this was the what's the word I'm looking for? This is what is implied. We're using our God-given talent to raise money from you, people who work, for this horrible event. Aren't we wonderful? And I always remember that debate in the wake of 9/11 because, and I've never really, it's a lot of these celebrity concerts and stuff like that. That's always been in the back of my mind in terms of, obviously some are handled very well. But a lot of these bands that did that in the wake of 9/11, quite frankly, never would have gotten as much attention as they did had they not played those events, sharing their God-given talents with the rest of us mere mortals. That was the sacrifice that they were giving. I just that is the type of thing that's starting to run thin now, and that's kind of what we're talking about today. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, the average person understands, because of social media and people, almost everyone has social media, and they understand on a level now that they didn't used to what it takes to get and keep attention. Their education level has risen in regards to how the celebrity culture works, and so they understand now better than they ever did before that getting attention is the name of the game. And so they've become very suspicious of people when they're getting attention. And so it's just not flying anymore. People see it much more easily now than they did before. And when we're struggling like we are right now with the cost of living being so high and people's food bills just in the last couple of years doubling, the average person is really sensitive to what's going on out there. And if somebody comes across as tone deaf, they're going to get it. I would be very careful right now if I was a celebrity and what I choose to say and do, because the temperature of people is pretty vicious in regards to ignorance.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, I've had a fair amount of contact with famous people. I'm not going to mention their names. But there's a saying that goes, those who have the misfortune of meeting their heroes are destined for a disappointment.
Oh, yes. It's very true.
And I got to tell you, a lot of the celebrities that I have met are dumb as hell. And some of them actually worked in the news business.
Oh, I had
a newscaster. I was doing live sound a number of years ago. And this newscaster came down, and he was one of the people that was on the bill. He was going to MC this or do some kind of BS there. I'm not exactly sure. And he was wanting to use a wireless mic. And I told him, I said, well, if you're on the stage, stay between this area and that area, because that's where the signal is strongest. And he goes, oh, don't give me that. He said, I do remotes all the time with a wireless mic, and I'm 50 miles from the station. And I said, that microphone that you're talking on is going to the camera in front of you. And if you're live, that's going from a truck that has a feed. It's going to the station. Or if you're taping, it's just being recorded in the camera. I said, that wireless mic that's on your belt is not going to the station.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he went, really? And so, I mean, this is the cataclysmic stupidity. And you know what? When he was on, he looked like Albert Einstein. I mean, he was great. He was absolutely phenomenal, a fantastic broadcaster, but didn't know jack about anything.
Yeah.
Didn't even know how his microphone worked.
Yeah.
So,
I've worked with celebrities for 20 years, 25 years, actually. And so I've worked with tons, and I actually like a lot of them. But it is true. And I was really fortunate to have been told by this really well-known woman in the publishing world. I'd asked her about work. I said, oh, it must be really cool to get to work with celebrities. I was very young. I think I was probably 25. Mm-hmm. And she was like, to be honest with you, the most interesting people in the world that I've met aren't famous at all. And some of the dumbest people that I've ever met are actually quite famous and not interesting in the least bit, because they've been catered to for so long. They don't have to be that interesting. And I was like, And it was a really good thing for her to tell me at the time, because it was right before I started working with a lot of really famous people. And I've had wonderful experiences, wonderful times. But those, 20 years ago was a lot different than it is now. And being a celebrity is going to become harder and harder to achieve. And it's going to be harder to maintain. And being a very large international celebrity is going to be even harder. And frankly, and this is my prediction, the future of celebrity is going to be about AI.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be interesting. That's a whole nother topic. I'll give you one more example of some people who've worn themselves a little thin, and that's Harry and Meghan. And you know, I just find it very odd that two of the most privileged people on earth set themselves up as people who have been badly treated. Imagine the horror of going to a formal event in England and meeting the Queen and having to curtsy. Oh, God. You know, and this whole idea about what color the baby was going to be. Hey, look, this family has a history of cutting off heads to preserve the bloodline. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's all about, honestly, Billy, I'm going to tell you, in my experience, all of that stuff gets stored up in the world of celebrity. All of those experiences get chalked away for future use to build careers. And when they exited that situation, they needed to create a platform for themselves. So it all became into game. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't the plan from the very beginning.
I'm sure it was, you know, to some degree. I think it's backfired on them now. From what I'm gathering, and I don't have any real information on this, but from the people that I know, the gist that I'm getting is the phone isn't ringing as often at that household. You know, how many times can you give the final truth, the true story? How many times can you do it? Okay. How many Netflix specials can you tell the real truth behind the royal family? Okay. And you know, it's sad because I got to tell you, I've liked Harry, and I will say this: the people in the royal family aren't as privileged as the children of our presidents and other people. I mean, they actually have to serve, do public service, and do a lot of other things. And there was a time when I saw Prince Harry in full military uniform doing something at Arlington Cemetery, and the way he spun around and saluted that monument, it gave you chills. He looked like he belonged there way more than any president I have ever seen there.
Yeah, and he belonged in that uniform. He really owned that moment. I remember that very well.
Yes, and now he's turned into this whiny, you know, my daddy doesn't love me as much as my brother. You know, it's just I
like your imitation. And again, that goes back to it's marketing, it's storytelling to keep attention and to sell books and to move products and to close deals. Like, I find very little that I read or hear about in the celebrity world is not somehow related to moving product, selling things, and creating a career for yourself.
Yeah. So the word is that they are becoming something that is not sought out for the publicity machines that you were talking about.
Yeah,
and I wish them no ill will. But I mean, I just find it very odd that the left held these two up. The people that are always complaining about privilege held the two most privileged people up that in the world. He is famous for having been born. And I admire his service in Afghanistan and all this stuff. That's not, I really and truly do. That's a real person there. That's a real honest to goodness person. But nonetheless, a lot of people have done what he did, and they're not as famous as he is because they aren't famous for being born. Yeah. And she is famous for marrying somebody who is famous for being born. That's their resume.
Yeah.
All right. And
I will say, and I have to, as a woman, say in defense of before she got married, the behavior of the media with her family and her personal story was absolutely breathtaking and appalling. And I don't dislike them. I don't dislike or like celebrities because they're just work related for me. It's not about a personal position on something, but in her situation, I was actually stunned and appalled at the behavior that went on before she got married. So
that's fair enough, and very well may have been true. I remember something about the father, and there was this. Yeah, there was that whole thing, and that's not right either. Don't get me wrong, but here again, that comes with being among the most famous people in the world. And Diana, you got to keep in mind, if you can combine Frank Sinatra, the Beatles, Michael Jackson, all these, she was as famous as any of them put together.
Oh yeah.
And I will say this: she used her fame for some good things.
Oh yeah.
And she wasn't perfect either. But, she was a person who actually sacrificed, tried to do right by her children, did not want her children to become spoiled. And, all the causes that she took up were not popular. They were not things that were going to make her shine as a princess. They were things that needed to be talked about. And to just put Meghan in that category, it's just not happening for me. She's got a ways to go.
Okay. Well, definitely different personalities. Diana had a gracious energy to her that spoke through cameras, through everything that she did. No matter what she was going through, she always came across as caring and loving and just different people.
Yeah. The final thing that I will say about celebrity is this. I'm from Canton, Ohio, and we are famous for the Professional Football Hall of Fame. And up the road is the Cleveland Browns. Down the road is Ohio State. I could go on. Where I am from, 500 miles from where I am sitting right now, is the land of Paul Brown, all those people. And, you're talking about absolutely the birth of the NFL was 15 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. That's why the Professional Football Hall of Fame is here. And people talk about football stars here like they are gods. And I want to be very clear. I enjoy football. I enjoyed it when I was younger more, but I still enjoy football. I think it's a great game. I enjoy the NFL. But, these guys are well compensated for playing a game. And to me,
a game.
And the word hero gets thrown around a lot in these parts where I'm at.
Yeah.
And hero from eros, the word origin, it really implies of self.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody throwing themselves on a grenade or running into a burning house to pull people out, putting yourself at risk, at not only bodily harm, but financial risk. Whatever you are doing something that is sacrificing yourself for the benefit of other people is not what football players do.
No.
It's not. And I hear again, I only say this, they're revered when they speak like it's God speaking. And I understand a lot of them have some good work ethics and they got some great sayings, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing, and all this stuff. Yeah, it's real motivating stuff, but it's still not being a hero.
Yeah,
and,
I agree with that.
And I would go as far to say teachers right now, considering that they're grossly underpaid, and are often in risk of physical harm. The parents don't support them. The community doesn't support them. And they still teach because there's something that they feel passionate about doing. To me, that's a hero.
Yeah. Yeah. They're sacrificing what they, things they could be doing that would bring them a lot more benefits, if you will.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They could be somewhere else in the private sector, making a lot more money. But they do it because they feel compelled to help. A lot of times it's their own community, or they just want the betterment of children. And I wish we revered them as much as we do linebackers, as much as we do music stars and actors. I just find it really odd that, we'll pay let's say at a school shooting or something, some coach or somebody steps in front of the line of fire. He makes $50,000 a year. And, he gets a little plaque on the wall, but when they decide to make a movie about it, the guy who plays him gets $20 million.
Well, it's interesting because the people who distract humanity the most, or have the ability to attract the most of humanity's attention, get paid the most. And that really is what that's about in its simplest form. And that's an interesting, when you really think about that, it's not that they're adding value to humanity. They're just capable of getting them to move in a specific direction. And that's really what they're getting paid for.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you have any, as our audience is listening, you can find us on Twitter. Shaman Isis is at Shaman Isis, and I'm at Billy Dees. If you have any comments on that, one more topic before we go, I would be remiss if we didn't at least mention President Biden. Again, we are live October 19th. This is 7:30 p.m. Later tonight, the president is supposed to address the nation, and we'll have more information on this and how it plays out. for our next time on. But it's suffice it to say he's going to ask for a mountain of money. The figure seems to be give or take 100 billion. That's with a B. 100.
I don't think that's going to go over very well with
$100 billion. Okay. And he's apparently making these moves to start to justify that with the public. And this money, here again, the facts on this are going to have to play out a little bit. And we're going to talk about the speaker because that's part of this. But apparently what is going to happen is he's going to ask for, I'm not sure what the breakdown is going to be, but most of this money is going to be for Ukraine and for Israel and humanitarian needs. Okay. That is an absolute staggering amount of money. And how well this is going to go over is yet to be determined. Now, exactly what happens as he presents this, it has to go through Congress. And as it stands right now, here again, we've talked about this before. I have no confidence in the Democrats or the Republicans. The Republicans can't even lead. They can't even lead themselves. I mean, they don't have a speaker.
None of them
they kicked the speaker out. They didn't have a plan for replacing him, and now they can't decide who goes in there.
Yeah,
and they're supposed to be leading us.
Yeah,
the Congress is a country club, and if they can't run that, if they can't run that, how are they making decisions that are affecting millions of people?
Yeah. And honestly, if Biden really does ask for that amount of money, I would be very surprised if he doesn't see a pretty strong reaction, particularly from younger generations who are really losing hope in the American dream doesn't exist to them anymore. It's gone. And when you take the American dream away, it becomes harder and harder to convince people that we should be spending money that they won't share with the people who are getting crushed here in America with other countries. So it's going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah.
And we know that corporate interests get involved with with war because it's a huge profit-making machine. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah. And what's happening in Israel right now has the potential to spread. And that's where, this money is kind of a cog in the wheel. I mean, you're not sure which way that's going to go. Is it going to deter a bigger war? Is it going to bring one in? You make a lot of arguments either way about that.
Yeah,
I will say this, and I'm not saying this to be funny in the least. I want to be very clear. I'm not picking on the president. I don't like either him or Trump, either one. So just that little disclaimer. As politicians, but as human beings, there was yesterday a video of President Biden on Air Force One, and he was speaking like out the door on the plane towards the press section there. And I was shocked by how frail he appeared.
Yeah.
And it's not like I didn't know that he was older. Mm-hmm. But this was like somebody who, and I'm not trying to be funny.
Oh, I know.
Looked like they got him out of a hospice bed.
Yeah.
And propped him up. He
does not look good right now. And it's been going downhill for a while now. And I just don't see how he's going to make it through a serious presidential race. And I have
another 4 years.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, even the next year, like he's really going down very quickly. And the Democrats have to be talking about that.
They have to. And here again, I want to be very clear. I'm saying this out of sympathy, empathy, all these words.
Yeah.
For somebody who, quite frankly, should be enjoying the final moments of his life somewhere, sitting on the back porch, drinking sweet tea and petting the dog.
Yeah. I believe he is 100% doing this because he feels like there's no choice, because there is no leadership, and he's really the option that exists. I think he's doing it out of commitment. Whether people want to believe that or not, what would be the other reason?
Yeah.
Power hungry? I don't know. He could be having a lot more fun without being the president.
Yeah, and that's what he should be doing. And I say that not because I mean, it's just the opposite. He shouldn't be enjoying the twilight of his life. And as I would hope everybody does, how we're going to die is something I guess all of us consider at one time or another. I just don't want it to be painful. I'm not particularly afraid of it. I don't want to go an inch at a time. like I've witnessed a lot of people do. He seems to be in enough good health that he could ride out however long he's got left, and enjoy his family, his life. He doesn't seem to be in pain or is suffering in any way, like a lot of people are who are in that position.
Yeah.
But it was difficult. It was painful for me to, when that video was on, I just felt so awful. He looked so white and his face was like kind of sagging, and he was barely speaking. It was like,
he's struggling.
And prior to that, 60 Minutes earlier in the week did an interview with him, and they actually, I believe it was Scott Pelley, prefaced the interview with what I would call a disclaimer, saying, the president's had a long week. He's 80 some years old, and he's really tired, but he squeezed us in. That shouldn't. I can you imagine before Putin gave an address, somebody coming out and saying, "Hey, look, Putin over here, he's had a long week."
Yeah. They're like, it's not looking great. Doesn't sound that great, but have a lot of sympathy. Like it's unheard of for 60 Minutes to preface an appearance that way. Like that's just wild.
It's wild. And going into the election year and going into probably some of the most dangerous times since World War II, I don't know that this is a good move for him or for the country or for the world, for that matter.
Yeah.
But
no President Kamala.
Yes, and that's something that people have mentioned.
Nobody, actually, as a matter of fact, I don't ever hear anybody talk about it or mention it, because usually that's actually a huge part of the story of who's getting elected, but she's just getting completely cut out of the story.
Well, what concerns me, let's say, for example, he went to Israel on Air Force One. And let's suppose, they nudged him and said, "Okay, Mr. President, it's time to exit the plane." He doesn't move. All right. And he's dead. What do you do with that in terms of optics, with getting the vice president in place? The president's on foreign soil. He's not alive. And what I'm speaking about is not like something that's impossible. He's in a stage of life. I'm in that stage of life where I could drop dead anytime. A lot of my friends have. And of course, that we could make the argument anybody can drop dead at some point or another. That's fine. That's true. But the older you are, the more likely that is going to happen. And that could happen. We could end up with a dead president on Air Force One right in the middle of God knows where. And how are you going to handle that? That's when an attack comes. It's not just the fact that it looks bad from a publicity standpoint, but anytime another country, especially a terrorist group or something like that, realizes there may be some confusion as to who's in charge, that's when it comes.
Well, interestingly enough, I think that most people understand, even terrorists understand, that they're figureheads that in many ways aren't really running things anyway. And I think we would slide right into the real people that are in power, because I have my own theories about who's really in power in this country, and it's not names that most people know.
That's true.
Would slide right in and just start running the show.
Yeah. Well, I would have to say, in a macro sense, I agree with that, especially when it comes in terms of the economy. You and I have talked about Vanguard and some of these other places are probably in a lot more control than what the United States government is.
Oh, yeah. Have you seen the numbers? They own the controlling voting interest in like 90% of the S&P 500. Yeah, Vanguard and BlackRock are running the show.
The only thing about the president, when something happens like that and there's a split-second decision to be made, that's when, you know what I mean? That's when somebody clearly has to be in charge of the nuclear codes. That's when somebody competent has to say, "No, we hold him. No, we fire him." Okay. And in that moment, in those critical short time moments, that's when the president is critical.
Yeah.
And I don't know that, we're running short on time here, but if you really want to check into what I'm talking about here, when Reagan got shot, what went on between the FBI and the CIA and the Secret Service in that hospital is scary.
Oh, yeah.
Because they didn't know who to trust.
Yeah, no, they didn't.
And we came a lot closer to having a nuclear accident than what a lot of people realized during that time.
Yeah.
So if you feel what I'm saying is that far-fetched, go ahead and research that on your own.
Yeah. I actually, it was I remember that very well when that happened. It was my intuition was just going nuts at the time.
Yeah.
That's another story for another show.
It's another story for another show. But when high-ranking Russian officials call Washington and say, "What in the hell is going on over there?"
Right.
It's pretty bad. All right. Shaman, go ahead and tell people where people can find your podcast, because I got to tell you, it's fantastic and your audience is huge. Everybody loves you. So let us know where you can find it.
Yeah, you can find the Shaman Isis show on all the major podcasting platforms. You can also find links to it and all the work that I do, including my books on shamanisis.com. And we're on X tonight. I meant to say that earlier. I keep slipping and saying Twitter when I mean X, but yeah.
Well, we can make jokes about it because we're in that world where everybody knows X is Twitter and the other way around, but a lot of people don't. I run into people at work and stuff, and what's X? What's that? Huh? Elon Musk? It's hard to believe that people can't know who Elon Musk is, but that's another topic for another day, as we said. My name is Billy Dees. I've been on the old Twitter and the new X for a very long time, at Billy Dees. In my bio, you can find links to my social media. The Billy Dees podcast is available on just about all the major podcasting platforms. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say all at this point. I don't know of too many that don't carry us. So you can find us there. Shows every week. So make sure you check us out. You can check out our playlist as well. I would appreciate it if you would do that. Shaman, we're going to be due for another program real soon. Thank you again for another great discussion.
Absolutely, Billy. Always a pleasure. I always enjoy talking to you.
Likewise, your insights are always greatly appreciated. And for the listening audience, make sure you check us out again next week. Be safe and take care of yourself.
You are listening to the Billy Dees podcast. Follow Billy Dees on Twitter, now the X platform, @BillyDees.